His readings are unstable, Paltrova murmured, tilting her emerald face toward the monitor. The human was unconscious, barely breathing. But there, just below the abdominal scanner, something flickered. Expanded. Moved. Then pulsed again. As a high-ranking xenobiotic nurse of the Galactic Federation, Paltrova had treated over 50 species. She'd stabilized ruptured exoskeletons, recalibrated 3 hearts, even manually extracted plasma parasites from Galactic hatchlings. But nothing had prepared her for what was now rising beneath the human's waistline. She blinked, scanned again, and again. Inflammation of the lower appendage, she whispered, voice catching like static. Suddenly, the monitor shrieked. Heart rate spike. Hormones surge. The human, still unconscious, let out a sound, something between a sigh and a growl. Paltrova stepped back, hand trembling. This wasn't a medical emergency. This was arousal. And for reasons she couldn't begin to explain, she felt it too. The medical bay on Earth's Joint Integration Facility was sterile, circular, and humming with low-level energy. Machines pulsed. Screens flickered. Languages from 5 galaxies scrolled across display panels. And in the center, on an elevated biobed, lay Coulter Reyes, the first human soldier to survive direct plasma impact from a Zalrun weapon. He wasn't supposed to be alive. And yet here he was. Paltrova, a nurse of the esteemed Lutheri species, tall, luminescent-skinned, with sharply pointed ears and deep teal hair that shimmered like starlight, had been assigned to monitor him. To her, humans were peculiar. Their organs were inefficient. Their sleep cycles were erratic. Their scent, always so strong and earthy. She'd never worked on one this closely. Not without armor. Not without filters. Coulter had been unconscious for 4 galactic cycles. His body riddled with scarring, but his regenerative capacity, fueled by something called testosterone and willpower, was beyond prediction. He was stable now, healing. But today, something was different. She leaned closer to administer a nutrient scan. Then she saw the sudden movement under the sheet. At first, she assumed it was a spasm, a side effect. But as her sensors recalibrated, the truth emerged like a glitch in the code. Vasodilation, blood flow, tissue rigidity. In Lutheri culture, physical reactions like this were deliberate, ritualistic, even, controlled by meditation or bond-matching ceremonies. But humans? Their bodies did it accidentally? She flushed, her skin tint turning an odd shade of silvery green. Emotionally, she was trained to stay detached. But she couldn't deny the odd tingle in her fingertips. The way her pupils dilated. Her breath hitched. Then he stirred. Not much, just a twitch of the fingers, a small inhale. But it startled her. She stepped back, but her eyes wouldn't leave the bulge that had now fully formed under the sterile white sheet. Her neural implant whispered updates. Endocrine spike detected. Cortisol levels elevated. Non-hostile arousal response confirmed. She stared at the data, then back at him, and then he opened his eyes. Dark brown, warm, and confused, but alert. "Hi," he said hoarsely. "You're not death, are you?" Paltrova's lips parted. She struggled for a clinical reply, but none came. "No," she said. "I'm your nurse." His gaze dropped, then widened. You might want to give me a second before pulling that sheet down." Paltrova blinked again. Her face unreadable. This was no longer just a recovery mission. It was the beginning of something the Galactic Federation had no protocols for. Coulter couldn't decide if this was heaven or hallucination. The ceiling above him glowed with soft cerulean light, and beside his bed stood a woman, if you could call her that. She was easily over 6 feet tall, sleek and flawless, with green-tinged skin that shimmered like polished jade. Her ears were long, angular, and regal. Her silver-white uniform clung to her body like it had been painted on, molded to curves that belonged more in dreams than reality. She looked like a goddess. "Name?" she asked, her voice like warm water pouring over cool stone. "Coulter Reyes," he replied, blinking slowly. "And you are?" "Paltrova," she said, tapping on a floating display that responded to her gestures. Nurse Second Class, Luthery Expedition Branch. He cleared his throat and tried to adjust himself in the bed, only to wince.
Oh, yeah.
Plasma hit. You were lucky, she said. Barely survived. Your vital organs were protected by a curious mass of muscular tissue and bone. That's my abs, sweetheart, he said with a half-smile. You saying I got saved by my six-pack? She tilted her head, processing. Affirmative. Though, your abdominal region appears to react strongly to external stimuli. He froze. Wait, what do you mean by that? Paltrova tapped the monitor. A 3D projection of his body appeared, glowing in subtle hues. His vitals, energy flows, and, much to his embarrassment, one particular area highlighted in bright red. Your body is experiencing localized inflammation. The region is engorged with blood. I assumed it was internal trauma, but now that you're conscious, I've reclassified it as responsive tissue expansion.
He coughed.
You mean, morning wood? Her brow furrowed. Morning wood. Oh God, Coulter muttered, throwing an arm over his face. Can we just agree that's a healthy sign I'm still alive? Paltrova studied him for a moment longer than was strictly professional. Then, softly, she nodded.
Yes.
Alive and quite reactive. The silence between them grew heavy. Not uncomfortable, exactly. Just charged. He lowered his arms slowly, peeking at her. She wasn't just examining him now. She was watching. Curious. Not just as a medic, but as a woman, an alien one, sure, but a woman nonetheless. Look, if it makes you uncomfortable, he said. I can think about taxes or something. It'll go away. She blinked, confused. I am not uncomfortable. I am analyzing. Your hormonal patterns are triggering an odd response in me as well. My hands are warmer than baseline. I feel a tingling in my spinal ridges. That sounds oddly mutual, he said, grinning. I have read that human males enjoy verbal sparring, she added. Flirting. Is that what this is? Well, technically, yes, Coulter chuckled. But we usually ease into it. You kind of skipped the whole getting to know you phase. I know your blood type, liver enzyme levels, and pheromone composition, she said plainly. He stared at her. Okay, fair. Another silence. Paltrova suddenly looked down, folding her hands. Her posture shifted, just slightly, from formal to uncertain. I have never treated a human this closely before, she admitted. Our textbooks refer to your species as biologically volatile. Romantic, he said with a wry smile. Do they also say we're loud and stubborn? They do. And also passionate. Dangerous in close-quarters environments. Easily excitable. I am beginning to understand why. He leaned up slowly on his elbow, ignoring the pain. And what do you think? Paltrova looked at him again. Her green eyes were vast, reflective. Then, quietly, I think the data lacks nuance. They held that gaze, something unspoken settling between them. The sterile medical room felt smaller, warmer somehow. No alarms, no lectures, just the soft buzz of two breathing hearts. Then the door hissed open. A squat, robotic assistant entered and chirped in Galactic Standard. Patient vitals are stabilizing. Secondary nurse requested in Wing C. Paltrova blinked, the moment shattered. She turned sharply and nodded. Understood. I will return. As she stepped away, Coulter said, Hey, before you go. She paused. Thanks. For keeping me alive. And for not freaking out. Her expression didn't change, but there was something subtle. A shift in her shoulders. A softening in her voice. I've studied 1,000 species, she said. But you're the first one to make me forget I'm supposed to just observe. Then she was gone, the door hissing shut behind her. Coulter lay back, staring at the ceiling, unsure if he was more stunned by surviving a plasma explosion or by how fast a nurse from another star system had managed to stir feelings in him stronger than anything he'd felt on Earth. He wasn't alone in the galaxy anymore. And somehow, that thought wasn't frightening, it was thrilling. Coulter had barely closed his eyes when the door to the medbay hissed again. He expected another medical droid or maybe a different nurse. But it was her, Paltrova. She stepped in with measured calm, but something in her posture had changed. Less rigid, less clinical. She was still dressed in her sleek uniform, though now her long hair was unbound, cascading like a waterfall of shimmering midnight. And her eyes, normally composed and scanning, lingered a beat too long when they met his. "I completed my shift rotation early," she said simply. He raised an eyebrow. "Missed me already?" "I was curious," she said, approaching the side of the bed. "Curious about how your recovery is progressing."
He smirked.
"I'm flattered. Especially since I know curiosity isn't a very Luthery trait." She folded her arms, expression unreadable. "Incorrect. Curiosity is discouraged in most Luthery medical sectors because it interferes with clinical detachment. I never questioned that rule. Until today." That quiet honesty disarmed him more than any flirtation could have. "So," he said softly, "what changed?" Paltrova hesitated. She stared at the diagnostic tablet in her hand, then set it down without looking. "When I scanned you earlier, something happened. I believed it to be a random biological reaction, but I now believe it was mutual." Coulter sat up straighter. "You mean what happened under the sheet?" She didn't flinch.
"Yes.
"But more than that. When our eyes met. When you spoke. When I listened. My bioneural readings spiked. My temperature regulation faltered. And I felt something I haven't felt since I was bonded." "Bonded," he repeated. "In our culture," she explained, "intimate partners are biologically aligned through shared energy patterns. It's rare, formal, carefully arranged." "Let me guess," Coulter said, voice low. "Humans don't usually make the shortlist."
"Correct."
"But your presence disrupts my equilibrium. Your voice. Your scent. The way you look at me." She said it so plainly, without a hint of embarrassment, that it hit harder than any poetic line. "I'm not trying to disrupt anything," he said sincerely. "But I'm not gonna lie and pretend I don't feel something too." Paltrova tilted her head, as if recalibrating. "Describe it." He laughed softly. "You want a diagnosis?" "Please." He took a breath, gazing up at her. "It's like I'm recovering, but not just physically. Like my chest feels lighter when you walk in the room. Like you're this quiet force that pulls all the pain out of me just by being close.
"I want to know everything about you. I want you to stay."
"That's what I feel." She stared at him, and for the first time, she looked genuinely shaken. "I was not trained for this." "You and me both," he replied. She stepped closer to the bed, slowly, deliberately. Her fingers hovered near his hand.
"Not touching, not yet."
"If I were to reach out now," she asked, voice nearly a whisper, "would your body respond the same as before?" Coulter met her eyes and smiled. "Only one way to find out."
A breath.
A heartbeat. Then her hand brushed his. The contact was electric. A jolt of warmth traveled up his arm and down his spine. Her fingers were long, graceful, slightly cool, but softened against his skin like they'd done this 1,000 times before. He didn't move.
Didn't speak.
And she didn't pull away. Paltrova's eyes narrowed slightly, as if analyzing the sensation in real time. "Your skin is warmer than Luthery norms. Your heartbeat has accelerated." "So has yours," he murmured. Her lips parted slightly. "My species is not supposed to react to humans." "Well, maybe your people need to update the textbooks." She didn't laugh, but her eyes shone brighter. Their hands stayed together. Not interlocked, not yet, but touching in a way that meant more than mere pressure.
It was a choice.
A quiet, mutual dare. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said, her voice trembling for the first time. "If they find out I initiated contact." He looked at her seriously. "Then let me. You're not initiating anything if I reach for you first." His fingers slid beneath hers, threading gently. She gasped, a soft, musical sound that echoed like a distant chime, and didn't pull away. "I don't know what this is," she whispered, "but it feels dangerous." He smiled, leaning closer. Good. That means it's real. The door chimed again. Peltrova jerked her hand back, eyes wide. A small floating bot hovered in, blinking red. Message for Nurse Peltrova. Transfer request for patient Coulter Reyes has been approved. Departure scheduled for. Cancel, she snapped before she realized the command was irreversible. Transfer confirmation acknowledged. Reassignment in progress. No, she said under her breath, turning to him. They're moving you. Coulter's jaw tightened. To where? A station outside the neutral belt. Far from here. From me. A silence settled like falling ash. He looked up at her. Then tell them no. Tell them I'm not fit for transfer. She shook her head. They'll override me. Unless what? Her hand went to a small device at her waist. Unless I declare a bond sanctuary protocol. What's that? It's only used when a Lutheri initiates an intimate alliance with a patient. If I declare it, you stay. But it becomes public record. Coulter met her eyes. Are you willing to do that? Risk your position? I don't know, she said. But I know one thing. What? She stepped close again. So close he could feel the gentle hum of her breath. I don't want to lose this. Even if I don't fully understand it. He nodded, pulling her hand back into his. Then we fight for it. Together. Peltrova stared at him, then finally, let a soft smile form on her lips. It wasn't logical. It wasn't approved. But it was the most alive she'd felt in years. And something in her knew. This was only the beginning. The hours before the scheduled transfer passed like a slow countdown to exile. Coulter sat on the edge of the bed, clothed now in simple off-world fatigues, staring at the blank wall like it might offer a way out. His wound had sealed. The pain was gone, but his chest felt heavy, as if something essential had been carved out. Peltrova hadn't returned. He'd replayed their last conversation in his head a dozen times. The heat in her voice, the softness in her touch, the way she almost smiled. That moment felt more intimate than anything he had ever experienced. And now, she was gone. Maybe rethinking it. Maybe forbidden from seeing him again. He couldn't blame her. But gods, he hoped she'd walk through that door one last time. Right on cue, it slid open. And there she was. No medical chart. No scanner. Just Peltrova, her hair down, her uniform half unzipped at the collar, revealing the delicate shimmer of her emerald skin. Her posture was rigid, but her eyes were on fire. Coulter, she said, and this time his name sounded less like a patient and more like a promise. He stood up slowly. So, this it? I have made my decision, she said quietly, stepping into the room and letting the door seal behind her. But you must understand, if I activate Bond Sanctuary, it cannot be undone. I understand, he replied. And I don't care what rules it breaks. She stepped closer. You will be seen as more than a patient. Our bond would override medical jurisdiction. Our energies will be linked. Permanently. Coulter closed the gap between them. Peltrova, I don't need a lecture on consequences. I've already made my choice. You're the one I want. Here. Now. Every day after. A long silence. Then, in a breathless whisper, she said, So be it. Her hand rose, pressing against the side of his neck. Her touch was cool, at first, but rapidly warmed as a gentle pulse radiated between them. He shivered involuntarily. From her waist, she withdrew a thin metallic band, shaped like a half-moon, and placed it over both their wrists. It glowed a soft gold. The moment it touched his skin, he felt it. Everything. His pulse synchronized with hers. A warm wave of emotion crashed through his body, her memories, her fears, her moments of loneliness drifting in the back of her mind. He saw flashes of her as a child under the violet sun of Lutheri Prime. Her first years of service. The isolation. The pressure to remain pure. To suppress her curiosity. To never, ever feel. Now, she was feeling everything. And so was he. Coulter took a step forward, pressing his forehead to hers. I feel you, he whispered. Every piece. Paltrova exhaled shakily. I never thought a human would make me feel complete. You're more than complete, he murmured. You're radiant. She gave a soft, surprised laugh. It was quiet and unfamiliar, as if even she didn't recognize it, but it was real. Genuine. Their lips hovered inches apart. And then finally, impossibly, they kissed. It wasn't urgent or hungry. It was slow, reverent, like they were both learning a new language through the silence between them. Her lips were soft, tasting faintly of stardust and cool mint, and when she deepened it, wrapping her arms around him, Coulter melted into her like he belonged nowhere else in the universe. She broke the kiss only to whisper against his mouth, "There is one last protocol for full alignment." "Tell me," he breathed. "We sleep. Together. Not sexually. Just connected. Skin to skin. Our bodies will stabilize each other's signals." His heart pounded. "You want me in your bed? I want you in my life." They left the med bay quietly, traveling through shadowed halls while the station slept. The stars outside gleamed against the black beyond, like silent witnesses to a bond being born. Paltrova's quarters were sterile, until she touched the walls, activating a soft golden glow. The ceiling projected a map of constellations, many of which Coulter didn't recognize. But in her room, beside her, it felt like home. She undressed without shame, neither sexual nor mechanical, just practical. He followed, removing his shirt and laying beside her on the cushioned sleep surface. They lay chest to chest, heart to heart. His hand found the ridge along her spine. Her fingers traced his jaw, his collarbone, the scar left by the plasma wound. In the quiet, she whispered, "This is forbidden." He kissed her forehead. "Then let's keep breaking the rules." She smiled. And for the first time in her life, under alien stars, beside a man from another world, Paltrova slept without fear. When they woke hours later, the band on their wrists had fused into a single symbol, and every monitor on the ship flashed the words, "Bond Sanctuary confirmed."